Hi, my name is Kate McInnes and I'm the Associate Editor of Vectortuts. Today I'll be sharing with you a few tips and tricks you can use to make your own pixel illustrations in Vector. So now we'll make a new document. We'll set it to web. We'll set the size to 640 by 480. Now the size can be anything you like. We'll be drawing into the art box, but the design will be shaped by the pixels. So as long as you're not making a really big pixel illustration, any of these settings will do, but we'll start with something smaller. Set the unit to pixels, and we'll set the color mode to RGB. This will help us have brighter colors when we choose them from the color sliders. And click OK. Now that we have our artboard, we're going to add some pixel lines with a grid tool. This is located here underneath the line segment tool. You simply hold down with your mouse and then go down to the grid tool there. Once you've got the grid tool, it's time to option click onto the artboard, and that will bring up your setting. The default settings in my dialog box are 200 pixels by 200 pixels for the outside of the grid, and it's been divided by 30 lines horizontally and vertically through the middle. I'd like to increase this just a little bit so I've got some more room to work with, and I also don't have to zoom straight into my illustration to be able to work on the finer details. Now remember, this is Vector, so we can work at any scale. If you've got a larger artboard, you can increase the default size of your settings, but for now I'll just put mine to 400 pixels square, and we can leave the divisions at 30. That should give us enough room. Oops, that's wrong. That should give us enough room for our drawing. Now down here you'll see two settings. Now use outside rectangle as frame. We don't need that one, but we do need to fill the grid because we'll be drawing into it. Now click OK, and there's your grid. You should have something that looks like this. Now you'll notice if you take the direct selection tool and click onto the grid that everything is selected in one click. This means that it's grouped. When we created the pixel grid, it was automatically grouped so that it's easier to select, but we don't need it selected, so we'll right click, ungroup. Now each of these lines are separate, but they all line up properly, so you can see the advantage of using the grid tool when making squares. The next step is to make the grid into a live paint group. So we can do this by keeping the selection tool on, mouse click down and hold it down, draw a marquee around the outside of your lines and release. And this selects all of those lines again without it having to be a group. Now we'll go to the live paint bucket here, shortcut K. Now this is usually nested underneath the shape builder tool here, so you'll need to go into this flyout menu to select live paint bucket. Now you'll notice when the live paint bucket hovers over an object, it highlights it red. Now there's a little line of text here next to it that says click to make a live paint group. This is what we will do. So click. Now this is available to be a live paint group. You notice that anything that can be filled in will be outlined with red, and this is every single little square in this grid. We can now color it in with the live paint bucket. You can tell a live paint group by the selection points. You'll notice these unusual looking nodes on the outside of the resize box. This is indicating that it's a live paint group. So we'll reselect the live paint bucket again, and you'll notice that it has some little squares above it. If you press the directional keys on your keyboard, this will run through some colors. Now where it's getting the colors from is the swatches panel here. Now you'll notice there's a little white line around every active color. This makes it very easy to use it to fill in shapes. And you can also set your own custom swatch colors, and this is what we'll be doing next. So next I'll be opening the color mixing panel, which is here by the palette, or you can go to Window Color. That will open up the panel for you as well. We drag that out and we'll put that right here. Now our document's RGB, that's because it's the default color for our document, so that will be the colors of the sliders. Now I'm going to show you a trick I use to make very bright pure colors. This is mixing with the HSB sliders. Now if you have a look here, HSB, that stands for hue. There we go, adding some colors. Saturation, that makes them darker, and you can see the changes in the first slider there as well to show you the kind of options you have of the colors to choose. And B, brightness, so we can turn them down to black, up to a very light pastel color, and anything in between. So the next thing I want to do is make a custom color group. Now I'll be drawing myself today, so I know how to draw myself in Pixel. I have done it quite a few times, and I will start off by choosing the main colors. So I'll block out my body. We'll use a skin color, and it's winter in Australia at the moment, so I'm quite light and pasty. I haven't been out into the sun since Invato camp in KL, which you may have seen the video on Facebook. If you haven't, go Facebook. Go to Vectortuts Facebook and check it out. That was lots of fun, but that was the last time I saw sun, and that was about 3 weeks ago. So I'm very pale and a little bit pink. There's my colour there. And you can see with the HSB I've been able to take out any shade from that and make it a nice pure colour without any muddying of the shades and make myself look grey. So we'll pull this pink into the swatches panel, and there's our swatches there. Now we want to make a color group like the ones here. I like to make color groups for each project. I can save them and open them later, and it saves me from having to set the colors for every project. So to make a color group, you select the swatch you would like to be part of your color group. You go to the flyout menu here and select new color group. Now I'll call that Pixel Me. There we go. And now we've got a color group down here. So I'm going to go ahead and make some more colors for my color group. I think that I do wear a lot of black, so I can safely drag this color in there. That's a dark grey, and perhaps even a lighter grey. So you can drag things into your group. This will all be part of the group. You notice that I often use HSB. That's because it is the best color mode for pixel drawings and icons, which I do a lot of. I will also add in a red just for a bit of variety. You can see that in pixel drawings it's much easier to distinguish the different parts if you've got brighter colors or colors that are quite different. If you have a look at the color swatches here, this looks like me already. There's my head, there's my body, there's my pants, and there's my shoes. But we aren't drawing a minimalist icon of somebody. We're going to flesh it out a little bit, so let's begin. Now, before I even start drawing, when I say begin, I like to double click on my swatches and make them global. Now this means that any colors I put onto the artboard can be changed by just a few clicks of the swatch, and I just change them around a bit. I will demonstrate this to you with a square. Now that's drawn in global red. If I double click into this swatch here, we'll go back to HSB, and I change this, put on the preview, you can see that because that's global, whenever I change the color on the artboard will change. Now, this is a really good way to take control of an illustration. If you're using just a few simple colors and you think that you might need to change it later, especially for a client, you can use a global swatch and then change it in about 2 seconds, and every item in that color will change with the global swatch. So I don't actually want to use green in my illustration, so we'll cancel that. Go back to our swatches here. Another trick I like to use so I don't have too many colours in my live paint bucket is to delete out any swatches that I don't need. So I'm not sure if I'm going to need the white or not, but I'll drag that into my colour group. Now to select all the swatches you don't need, go back into the flyout menu, select all unused. Now you'll see little white outlines around the swatches you're not using. Because we've specified the colours before we've actually done any drawing, a few of our swatches are selected here. So hold down the Command key and we click them off. Click in some of the ones that we don't want. You can choose whole groups as well. And then drag these down into the trash can and they're gone. So now it's time to start drawing our pixel person. Go back to the live paint bucket here, and you can see now when we press the directional buttons that will cycle through the colours just over here. If you have other colour groups or other swatches outside of the groups, you can press the up and down buttons and that will take you into those other layers there. But because we've got a group, this contains our selections just to that main group there, and that will cycle through. So we'll go to the skin colour. Now I think this is actually pretty light. I know that I am that colour, but now looking at the white background of the artboard, we just darken it up a touch so you can see what I'm working on. Now we'll click that to be global. Shift click the rest of these, double click them, we'll make them all global as well. So if you need to make all your swatches global at once, Shift select and click them, or Command click them, then double click on one of the selected swatches and that will bring up the dialog where you can, so here is an example, click the global here. Click OK. So now when we change the colours in our pixel person, they will all change at once. They'll be quite uniform. So select that colour of the skin there and we'll draw into the artboard here. The good thing about the global paint bucket is that you can hold down the mouse key while you're filling in any shapes and it will fill them in one after the other. So everything here that you see in a red outline, that is actually going to be filled with the skin colour. So there you go. We'll undo that. Now one last thing we need to do before we start blocking in our colours is to change this grid to make it a bit easier to see what we're drawing. So you take the magic wand tool here, and we select the lines. We set this to be a different line colour. So at the moment it's not sure what colour it should be. We go into the HSB sliders and we can set a colour from the bottom here, HSB, and we will take out all the colours and make it a very light grey. Now we're not using the global swatches in this one because when we need to change the colours later it won't know the difference between your grid lines and your fill lines, so we'll just use a random colour now. We don't even have to save this in the swatches, it's just to make it show up quite light while we're drawing. You take the selection tool, click off. Now if you've got a pretty good monitor you'll be able to see these lines, otherwise you shouldn't be able to see them at all. Mainly it's just when you're looking very closely you can see how many grid lines you've got left and whether you need to alter your picture to fit the grid lines. Again, when you start planning your designs, you really need to make sure you've got quite a lot of blocks so you never run out of room. We'll start drawing now, so we'll take the live paint bucket over here and we'll load it up with our first colour, which will be the skin. Rather than getting bogged down in the finer details, we'll just block out the shape of the body first and then we can make some adjustments from there. I'll show you a trick using that in a minute with the paint bucket, but as you can see we're going backwards and forwards in the buttons again, so we can select the skin. We'll start with the feet, so this will be the ankle, and don't worry if it does two lines like that, we need two lines. We'll go up, so that's about the length. Now we need a 2 pixel gap between those legs. We'll go up there, so that's about the hip. Maybe add a few more if you want to look tall. Now we add in that's sort of the waist area there. We bring these up, and you can see we're about to run out of room, so we can bring these down as well. And then we've got our body shape, so that's roughly about where you want to see the shoulders, right there. Now the neck's going to be 2 pixels like that, and the face is going to line up with the shoulders. Come up the top here, see how we're almost running out of room at the top of the pixel grid. This is why you should always use more pixels than you need. But we'll run down here. Now we've got a square head, and the arms will come off the side here, and the feet will be 2 pixels at the bottom here. So you can see we're sort of building up the shape of the body now. We fill in the face. Now the next thing you need to do to judge the shape of the body is put in the mouth and the eyes. So we add the mouth there, 2 pixels. Now depending on where you position the eyes, the emotion will change. We have a tutorial on that in the quick tips section. Now I'll add a link to that in this tutorial for you. Now if you add eyes that are long, they look a bit sad. Eyes that are like that, they look tired. We're going to add some fairly cute eyes off to the side like that, and we may want to put them in black because that's actually the color of my hair. So we've got the eyes in like that. We can start blocking in the hair. So we select our grey. Now I've got just a bit of a fringe. I actually have some little blonde streaks in the front. They were coloured, they were purple and pink, but that all washed out, and now I'm looking a little bit like Rogue from X-Men, but I won't bother about drawing that in because I have not put the colours into the swatches. It doesn't really matter, as long as you plan your colours before you draw your character, then you won't get stuck like I am. So we fill in the blocks like that. You can add little details off the side. You can take details out, so you move the colour up to that null swatch, and you can use that to delete out areas of your illustration that you might not want. And then you can go back to your swatches. So the Live Paint Bucket really is a useful tool for when you're drawing pixel art, because everything really is just mouse clicks, and the directional tools will help you go through your swatches, so you can just put in a pixel, take out a pixel, and you don't have to swap tools too often. So we'll start blocking in the body with the clothes. So we use the lighter grey. Now I like to add a bit more of a neckline, but it's up to the style of the clothes you're drawing. You may want to close it up, you may need to draw a turtleneck or something like that, so it's really up to the clothes on your character. I'll bring this down here, fill in the top area like so. Now I've got no pants on, so I'll probably need some pants. Put the pants in, and you can see, even though there is quite a big gap between the legs, once you start putting in the clothing, it all comes together. Now it looks like I'm wearing pajamas, so I'll put in a belt, and I may even want to define the area up here. Although, as you can see, it goes into the hair, so you need to really plan your colours to not have to overlap each other, because if I wanted to keep this darker line around the neck, then it will go straight into the hairline and will confuse the viewer, and it will disrupt the visual balance of the design. So we'll just put that back in as the light grey. We'll put in the shoulders, and now the arms, 2 pixels as well. It will come down to around here. If you stood up and put your arms to your waist, your hands rest roughly on your pockets. So we'll draw that in on the other side. Now you can see that the arms are also blending into the top, you might want to come up with different designs that will break these out. If you had a gap between the two, it would look like you're a bit of a bodybuilder, so you really do need to keep that space closed up. But for the purposes of this tutorial, I will just make my arms skin colored. And you can see that it's restored the visual balance of the design. So I'm going to put in a hand. Now I keep selecting swatches manually. This is because I keep forgetting to use the directional tools. You may find that you do this, but whatever you're comfortable with, then that works. So put in the watch. And the other hand, you can see that they're slightly off center. So you go, we'll use the directional tools this time. You go to your null swatch and you can delete that whole area out and then go back. Draw that in and then add the hand like so. So I'll just go and refine the shape of the body now. I'm going to bring the shoulders down just a little bit so I don't look so square. So that will have, you can take out a bit more depending on the type of character you've got, but I think that looks quite fine. And we'll add in the shoes. So that will be a darker color than the pants. We'll add them in like that. So you can see that we've got the basic outline of the body. You may want to add a little bit more here. There you go. So you sort of have a basic pixel person there. You can go crazy, you can add more details, you can make more people, you can even do animals in this kind of way. You can draw whole cities and go really crazy with your pixel drawings. I would recommend every time you do draw something that you make your little character and then start on a new document with the same settings but just more pixel grids. Once you're finished, you can line them all up in a new document, but it really sort of saves you from coloring in over areas that you might want to move around later. So treat it all like a scene and you'll create your characters, and then after that you can create your scenery and then put them together in the final document. So now that you've finished your pixel person, it's time to release them from the grid. So we'll do this by taking the selection tool, clicking onto the grid, and then we go up to Option, down to Live Paint, and we will expand. So now this has turned into shapes. So these shapes are part of a group, and we can tell this by in one click we've selected everything. If you go to the Layers panel and drill down, you can see that there's a few groups within this shape, and there's lots and lots of paths for every square that's been drawn. So we have two groups within this group. One's the figure and one's the grid. So we can get rid of the grid by just dragging that into the bin, and now we've got our little person here. So you can see some very fine lines in this illustration, and if you like the lines, then we can stop here. And really, if you're printing this at large scale or you're using it at small scale, you really won't see those lines. It's just in the in-between where there's some very fine little pixels running through our big chunky pixels. So we need to group these together, and what I'll do is I'll select it, right click, ungroup. Now that's still a group, so we do that again. Now that's released. Every little bit here can be selected on its own. This is good. This will help us use the next tool, which will be the Shape Builder tool. So this is in CS5. The Shape Builder tool is in the same little flyout menu as the Live Paint bucket. So you select that. We go to our object, draw a marquee around it. We take that Shape Builder tool and we just start drawing these little squares together and then up through the diagonal. Now that's a long way to do it. If you've got a really easy kind of basic little picture, then it's quite quick to use this tool. Otherwise it can take a long time to go through a whole illustration. So a quicker way to do it is to get the magic wand tool, double click on it, that will bring up the options. Now we're looking to select the same fill color. We'll have a tolerance of 0, so if there is anything that's not quite the same color but fairly similar, so if you're working on something that's fairly detailed and you want lots of gradients of the pixels, then putting it on a 0 tolerance will select only the exact color that you've used. So you take your magic wand, click on a color, and you'll see that this is selected just the skin tones. And then we go to the Pathfinder palette, select that, we'll bring that up. Now you can see that there's some options here. We'll be using the first option here, which is Unite. You click that, and then that will stick all of your little pixels together. And if you've got a few lines running through it like this is a good time to take the Shape Builder tool, and then you can just drag lines between them and that will tidy it all up for you. Now you can see that dragging the lines just there took away all of the little node points. Now this is also another reason why you can tidy up with the Shape Builder tool. Like that. Now you've got single pixels on each corner and nothing in between. When you're drawing straight lines in Vector, you really should only have a point for every corner. You should not have any points in between, as this will distort the shape of the image and it will make it harder to really cut those lines along the pixel grid, so you can end up with slight blurred areas on your straight line. So I'll go and close up the rest of the pixels in this illustration. So we've selected the hair. We use the Pathfinder panel to stick these all together. Just run through. And that's all of our colours there. So now that we've used our Pathfinder on all of the colours, you can see here in the groups, when you drill down from the main group, that each of the colours have their own group. This is because we've put them together with the Pathfinder panel, and if you drill down a bit further, you can still select them individually. Well, what we'll do now is stick these all together with the Shape Builder tool here. So select that. Now each of these objects need to be selected with the Shape Builder tool separately, because it will pick up any kind of blending modes that you've got on your colours and it will apply it to other things. For example, if I was to select everything and then use the Shape Builder tool on the lips and then use it on the hair, suddenly I've got red hair. This is kind of a cool way to colour in images, but we don't need to do that today. That's for another tutorial. What we will do is select each group individually and then use that Shape Builder tool to then fill in the gaps and take out any of the extra points that we don't need. It's fairly simple. Just click on it and remember to do each part. We've already done the skin. We'll do the t-shirt. And we will do the pants. No, we've done the pants, that's fine. So that's everything, apart from the shoes. Alright. Now, that's everything. And there you have it, a really simple way to draw a pixel person. Or more specifically, how to draw a picture of the associate editor of Vectortuts. Anyway, hopefully you've learnt a few tips and tricks along the way, and I would really love to see what you come up with. If you make a picture that you'd like to share, please do put it on the wall of our Facebook group, Vectortuts Facebook group. And yeah, and if you've got any questions, just put them in the comment section below. I hope you've enjoyed this too.